It is a hot July afternoon. You carry a trash bag out the back door, and before you even get the lid off the can, 3 flies lift off the rim. 2 more come off the side. You drop the bag in, slam the lid down, and one of them follows you right back toward the kitchen. You swat at it with your hand and miss, and it lands on the screen door like it owns the place. You already bought the trap. The hanging fly bag from the hardware aisle, $5.97. You hung it by the fence a week ago. It caught a few, and the rest are still riding the garbage can lid every time you walk out there. So you bought the refill pack too, because the first bag was full and the flies were not gone. That refill ran you another $3 and change. And now you are looking at the porch rail and the window over the sink and the rim of that can, and the flies are still there. Same as last Tuesday, same as the Tuesday before that. $10 gone and another 10 coming, because next month you will do the whole thing over again. Here is what nobody told you, and the reason nobody told you is plain. There is a way to trap houseflies that costs about $1 a batch to bait and uses a bucket you already own. The old folks did it before there was a product aisle for it, and it uses the same principle the United States Department of Agriculture was printing in bulletins nearly 100 years ago. It is not new. It is not clever. It is a pail, a cone, and a little sweet bait. And the only reason you never learned it is that nobody makes a dime teaching a family to reuse a bucket when there is steady money in selling them another bag, another refill, and another spray every summer. By the end of this video, you will know exactly how to build it, what it costs to the penny, where to put it so it works instead of making things worse, and what one habit matters more than any trap. You will also know plainly where it will not work, because I have never sold anyone a miracle, and I am not starting today. I want to be straight with you before I go any further. That trap you bought, the spray you grabbed off the shelf last weekend, the refill pack you ordered because the first one ran out, none of that is solving your problem. You are managing a symptom and paying for the privilege, and next week you will do it again. The flies are not coming because you forgot to buy the right product. They are coming because something near your home smells like supper to them, and no store-bought bag on a hook is going to change that arithmetic as long as the invitation is still sitting by the back door. Here is what I am going to walk you through today. By the end of this, you will know how to build a reusable fly trap for somewhere between $2 and about $6, depending on what you already own. You will know what bait actually works on houseflies and what does not, where to put the trap so it helps instead of making things worse, and what one cleanup habit matters more than any trap you will ever own. You will also know plainly what this does not do, because I am not going to sell you a miracle. I am going to hand you a method, show you the figures, and tell you the truth. My name is Hal Perkins. I am 74 years old, raised in rural Missouri by a mother and a father who came up through the Depression and never wasted a thing in their lives. My father was a practical man. My mother was a careful woman. Between the two of them, they raised a family on almost nothing and died with more in the bank than neighbors who earned 3 times their wage. I worked as a mechanic and a handyman my whole life, and I never carried a debt. Everything I know about running a household on next to nothing, I learned at that kitchen table. The fly trap I am about to show you is the kind of thing my mother would not have called a trick. She would have called it Tuesday. It was just what you did when the weather got warm, same as you took the trash out and kept the lid tight. There was no product aisle for it. There was a pail, a little sweet bait, and a piece of stiff cardboard, and it worked. I share these things because somebody has to, or they are gone. Now, before I show you what to do, you need to understand why this works, because that tells you what to expect and what not to expect. The plain reason is not magic, and it is not poison. Adult house flies are drawn to moist, odorous food sources. That is what pulls them to your garbage can, your compost pile, the dog area, the recycling bin you did not rinse. They feed on that film of decay and they breed in it. Under good summer conditions, a house fly can go from egg to adult in as little as about 7 days. So if the source stays, fresh flies keep replacing the ones you swat. What a trap does is intercept the adults where they gather. And the kind of trap that works best for this is not complicated. It is a cone entry over a container of bait. The fly follows the odor down through a small opening, drops into the space below, and then cannot easily find that little hole again to get back out. That is the whole geometry of it. The USDA described this exact principle in Farmer's Bulletin 734, a document on fly traps and their operation that first appeared in 1916 and was revised into the 1930s. It is not new, it is not clever, it is a funnel, a pail, and a smell. The bait matters, and this is where most of the bad advice comes in. House flies are best attracted to sweet fermenting bait. The old USDA guidance called cane molasses and water one of the most economical and effective baits for houseflies, and it noted that the bait becomes notably more attractive on the second or third day once fermentation gets going. Brown sugar syrup works nearly as well. What you do not want around a normal home is rotting meat. Meat bait draws blowflies and it stinks to high heaven beside a patio, and it can attract pets and wildlife you do not want near the trap. Sweet fermented bait is the right teaching choice for housefly work around a home. One more thing about the bait. If you add a few drops of dish soap to the liquid, it breaks the surface tension. A fly that lands on soapy water sinks. A fly that lands on plain water can skate right back off. The soap is not a poison. It is a physics problem, and it costs you a fraction of a penny. So what you should expect is this. The trap will not do much in the first few hours. Give the bait a day or two to begin fermenting and building odor. By the second or third day, if you have placed it near a real fly source, you will start seeing catches. What you should not expect is that one bucket eliminates every fly on the property if the garbage can is still filthy and the dog waste is still sitting in the sun. The trap is supplementary. The real backbone of fly control, according to every university and government pest guide I have read, is removing the breeding source. I will come back to that because it matters. If this is the kind of plain, old-fashioned knowledge that keeps real money in your pocket, subscribe. I put one of these out every week, and not one of them will cost you a dime to try. Now let me show you exactly what to build, what it costs, and where to put it. You need a 5-gallon bucket. If you already have one in the garage or the shop, your cost is $0. If you are buying one new, a Home Depot 5-gallon bucket runs $3.98. Write that down. You need a cone lid. One sheet of poster board will do it. A 6-pack of poster board at Walmart is listed at $5.80, which works out to about 97 cents a sheet. If you have stiff scrap cardboard on hand, this drops to nothing. You need sweet bait. The strongest historical option is unsulfured molasses. A 12-ounce jar at Walmart is $3.94. You will use about a half cup of concentrate per bait batch, which comes to roughly $1.31 before you dilute it with water. If you would rather save even that, brown sugar works nearly as well. A 2-pound bag runs about $3.74, and your per batch cost is lower still. Either way, you are talking about $1 or $2 per bait refill, not another $10 trap off the shelf. You need dish soap. An 18-ounce bottle is $2.94 at Walmart. You will use a few drops. Call it pennies. You need a couple of binder clips, clothespins, or a little tape from the junk drawer to secure the lid. I am not going to price your junk drawer. Here is exactly what to do, in order. Step 1. Before you build a single thing, decide where the trap is going to live. This is the step most people skip, and it is the one that matters most. You want it near the place where flies naturally gather, the garbage can area, the compost, the dog run, the coop, but not right beside the back door, the patio chairs, the grill, or the kitchen window. Public health guidance and old USDA advice both say the same thing. A baited fly trap belongs on the perimeter or away from where people spend time. If you put an attractant right beside your door, you are pulling flies toward the exact spot you want them away from. Think about that. The trap works by smell. You want that smell intercepting flies out where they already are, not inviting them closer to where you eat. Step 2. Make the cone lid. Cut a flat round piece from poster board or stiff cardboard, large enough to cover the bucket mouth and sit flush. Cut a hole in the center, then form an inverted cone that hangs down from that hole into the bucket with a small opening at the tip, about 3/8 to 1/2 inch across. That is large enough for a house fly to enter and small enough that it will struggle to find its way back out. Secure the cone to the lid with tape or clips. The lid should sit flat on the bucket rim with no side gaps. If there are gaps along the edge, the flies walk right out. That is the most common mistake. Step 3. Mix the bait. For the molasses version, 1 part molasses to 3 parts water. Stir it, pour it in the bucket. For the brown sugar version, 1 part brown sugar to 4 parts water. If you want it working faster, add a small splash of vinegar to kickstart fermentation. Then add a few drops of dish soap to whichever mix you chose. You do not need to fill half the bucket. 1 to 2 quarts of bait solution in the bottom is enough to create odor and a drowning surface. More than that wastes your sweetener for no gain. The old format spirit is pennies, not extravagance. Step 4. Seat the lid. Make sure it sits flush and the only route in or out is that small cone opening. Then leave it alone. Set it up in the evening and judge it after 24 to 48 hours, not after 20 minutes. The bait needs time to ferment and build the odor plume that does the real attracting. Step 5. Service it on a rhythm. In hot weather, check it every 2 to 3 days. Top up the liquid if it is getting low. Once the catch becomes foul, dump it, rinse the bucket, and mix a fresh batch. Old USDA guidance said traps should be emptied about weekly when fly pressure is high, and bait containers should be washed at intervals. That is good advice. A neglected trap with rotting bait and no liquid left is not catching anything, and if it sits wet long enough, you risk breeding more flies instead of catching them. Now let me say something plain about a few wrong approaches, because there is a lot of bad advice floating around on this one. Do not hang a baited trap right at the porch where people sit. You are pulling flies to your face. Do not use rotting meat because you think a stronger smell must be better. Meat bait is for blowflies and remote outdoor trapping, not for housefly work beside a family's backyard. Do not fill the whole bucket with expensive syrup. You need odor and a drowning surface, not a swimming pool. And do not buy another indoor spray while leaving the garbage can dirty. That is paying to manage a symptom while feeding the cause. You are not learning a new trick here. You are recovering an old one, and I want to be honest about the history. The USDA published Farmers Bulletin 734 on fly traps and their operation starting in 1916, and search records show a March 1930 revision, which puts this squarely in the Depression years. That bulletin described the same cone entry principle we just built, discussed sweet fermenting baits for house flies, and treated trapping as ordinary household and farm practice. Depression-era families did not invent the fly trap, but they were the kind of people who kept using a working method because it cost next to nothing, and they could not afford to keep buying a new purpose-built answer every time the weather turned hot. That is the honest bridge. My mother did it with a pail and a scrap of board. You are doing it with a bucket and a sheet of poster board. The principle has not changed in 100 years. The trap saves you the most money when it becomes part of a routine. And the routine is not just about the trap. Take the trash out at least once or twice a week and do not let the bag sit overnight in the heat if you can help it. Clean the garbage can itself. Not just change the bag, wash the can, because that odor film on the plastic is what the flies are smelling. Keep the lid tight. Rinse bottles and cans before they go in the recycling. Bag pet waste promptly. If the fly activity seems centered on a drain or a disposal, that is a different problem. Clean the drain. Use and repair your window screens. Every one of those steps removes the wet, decaying, attractive material that feeds and breeds flies. The trap catches adults. The cleanup stops the next generation. Now, be honest about what this does. A baited cone bucket can reduce adult house flies and related nuisance flies around a home, especially near trash, animal areas, and outdoor gathering points. Best case, you see visible catches within a day or two, stronger attraction after the bait has fermented, and meaningful reduction over the next week when you also clean up the breeding sources. That is a strong result for a $2 build. Weak case. If the neighbor keeps livestock, the dumpster behind the building is overflowing, or your own cans and pet area stay filthy, you will keep catching adults without ending the problem, because new ones develop in as little as about 7 days under warm conditions. Where it fails outright, indoor fruit fly or drain fly problems that need source removal specific to those pests, heavy stable fly pressure from nearby livestock, situations where the trap is placed too close to doors, seating, or food areas, and homes where nobody addresses the trash, the manure, the compost, or the pet waste. The trap is supplementary. If somebody tells you one bucket kills every fly forever, they are not being honest with you. I would rather you trust me on the small, true thing than doubt me on a big, false one. If flies are emerging from wall voids, drains, or a hidden dead animal source inside the house, or if the species is unclear, or if numbers stay severe after you have cleaned up and trapped for a couple of weeks, call a professional. That is the right call, and there is no shame in it. This is the cheap first thing to try, not a cure for everything. Keep the trap away from food prep areas, play areas, and anywhere small children or pets will be getting into it. Houseflies carry pathogens from waste to food, so the trap itself is a control device sitting near a dirty zone, not something to set beside the grill or the picnic table. If you add dish soap, the liquid is mildly soapy water with sugar, not a poison, but it is still a bucket of drowned flies and fermenting bait, and should be handled and dumped as such. Refresh and wash the bucket regularly. Do not let it become a neglected puddle of filth in the yard. Now I want to take a moment because here is where it all comes together. Look at what we have walked through. One reusable bucket, one cone lid you cut from a sheet of poster board, one batch of sweet bait, molasses or brown sugar and water with a few drops of soap, placed on the perimeter near the real fly source, not the door. Given a day or two to ferment. Checked and refreshed every few days. Paired with the cleanup that actually stops the breeding. That is the whole method, and it is the same method the USDA was printing in bulletins 100 years ago. The honest math is plain. Put it on the pad. If you already own a bucket and use scrap cardboard, your first build costs about $1.31 for the molasses bait plus pennies for soap. Call it $1.35. Each rebate after that is about the same, $1 and change. If you buy the bucket new, your first build is the bucket at $3.98, the poster board at 97 cents, the bait at $1.31, and a few pennies of soap. Call it $6.28. Now line that up against the store-bought way. A disposable outdoor fly bag runs about $5.97. Bait refill packs are shown at about $9.99 for 3, which is $3.33 each. So you buy the trap, you buy the refill a few weeks later, and by midsummer you have spent $10, $15, $20, and you are still throwing the thing away and buying another one. With the reusable bucket after the first build, you are rebating for about $1 and change each time, and the bucket lasts as long as you own it. The bigger value is what you stop buying: the next bag, the next refill, the next spray for the flies that made it indoors because nobody cleaned the can. There is no money in teaching a family to reuse one bucket and a little sweet bait. There is steady money in selling them a trap, then another trap, then a refill, then a spray for the ones that got through. Some of those products work fine. Some of those baits are non-toxic, and some use insecticide. I am not calling anybody a villain. I am saying the plain thing. Convenience products keep selling, and the reusable skill gets quiet. Nobody had to coordinate that. 2 generations of families got a little more comfortable, stopped asking their parents how the old folks handled flies, and the knowledge just faded until every summer became another trip to the hardware aisle. You can be the one who never paid. This was never really about a bucket. It is about whether every nuisance in the yard becomes a new purchase or whether you remember how to solve some of them with one container, one cheap bait, and a little upkeep. A home that runs that way depends on you, not on the store. That is the kind of home my mother and father kept. It is the kind of home I have kept. And it is the kind of home that, on a fixed income, keeps real money in your pocket instead of sending it down the aisle every time the weather turns warm. Here is what I want you to do. Tonight, scrub your garbage can, not just change the bag, wash the can. Bag the pet waste, rinse the recyclables, fix the screen if it has a tear, and mix one batch of bait and let it start aging. This week, build the cone lid. Set the bucket on the perimeter near the real fly source and judge the catches after 24 to 48 hours. Do not judge it after 20 minutes. This month, keep the trap serviced, the can washed, the lid tight, and the odor source controlled. This season, remember to start earlier next year before the summer numbers explode. Trapping that begins early in spring prevents more flies later than trapping that starts in July. The old USDA guidance said the same thing, and it is still true. Now I have 2 things I would like to hear from you in the comments. First, which spot around your place is making the flies the worst? The trash cans, the dog area, the coop, the compost, or something else? And second, if your mother, your father, your granddad, or your grandmother had an old fly trick that worked before the store sold 12 different answers for it, write it down below. These little inherited methods disappear when nobody writes them down, and I read every single one. Next time, same principle, different problem. How the careful old folks cut fly numbers at the source by treating the garbage can smell itself instead of just fighting the adults. Subscribe so you do not miss it. Until then, scrub the can, mix the bait, build the cone, set it on the perimeter, and let the old method do its quiet work. That is how the careful old folks handled every summer without owing the hardware store a dime. That is how it is still done in any home that remembers.